Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name's Siwan Smith, and I'm delighted to be here with you all today to discuss bringing your ideas to life. When I was at school, I had a very set idea of career possibilities. I'd go to university, get a degree, and then go on to work my way up the corporate ladder. In reality, my journey has been a little bit more varied than that. Not tons, but a little bit. So I changed university courses twice, got a degree in PR and events management, but went on to spend the next 7 years specialising in various forms of marketing. 2 years ago, I changed career path yet again and became the Diversity and Inclusion Manager at KTN. And that opened my eyes to numerous routes and possibilities for careers, entrepreneurship and innovation, which I hope we can bring to life in this session. I'm now the Programme Manager for Women in Innovation and Young Innovators, and work side by side with colleagues at Innovate UK to help accelerate ambitious ideas into real-world solutions and help create positive social, economic and environmental change through innovation and business. And I'm also a member of the Board of Trustees at the Blue Coat School in Liverpool, where I hope to encourage more young people to explore opportunities and adapt as your interests and passions develop. So I'm delighted to be joined today by three of our young innovators. We've got Folu Ogunyeye, apologies for saying your name incorrectly, Ellis Parry, and Diana Kviatkovskaja. Again, apologies, really bad at pronunciation. And one of our Women in Innovation Award winners, Emma Fieldhouse. They'll be sharing their journeys and providing an insight into innovation with us today. And if you have any questions for them, please do pop them in the chat and we will try and answer as many of them as possible. So firstly, can I ask you all to introduce yourself a little more? Can we start with you, Folu?
Yeah, so my name is Folu Ogunyeye, spelled F-O-L-U. There's a bit of a spelling error, but that's okay. I'm a full-time student actually in my final year at the University of Cambridge, and I'm also the founder of my social enterprise, Ramos Careers, which is all about providing tailored online career guidance and resources to help students with all the steps of their career journey leading up to and including when they apply to internships and graduate jobs.
Thank you, Folu. Can we jump then to you, Ellis?
Yeah, hi everyone. So Ellis Parry. I've been, I guess, now a founder for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I didn't know really what I wanted to do post-uni. I ended up doing a PhD in something that I wasn't completely committed to. And I did manage to get a doctor in front of my name, but that was about it really. And I now work on a company that's developing assistive technology for people with neurological conditions. So things like brain injury, stroke and dementia. So yeah, really happy, excited to share more about my story and hopefully give you guys some tips if you want to pursue something similar.
Thank you, Ellis. Diana, over to you.
Hi all. So my name is Diana Kviatkovskaja. I'm a co-founder of Chisel Robotics, that is medtech startup based in Bristol, and we are developing a Fitbit technology for lower limb prosthesis users. You might think, why would people need such a technology in the first place? So our main objective of our system is to reduce the length and the frequency of the clinical visits for the patients who are wearing lower limb prostheses. And as a result, it helps to provide more targeted care and reduce costs to the healthcare providers. And then going back to my slightly personal story, I originally come from Lithuania, from really small town, about the size of 5,000 people. And I moved to UK when I was 18 years old. Took me a while to study and learn English. And after a couple of years, I decided to go back to the education here in UK. And as a result, I completed my degree in psychology. Due to random events, I ended up in a startup community, and somehow I'm here having my own business 2.5 years later after my graduation, which is completely crazy, and I never anticipated that to happen. So I would like to share my journey with other students. Yeah, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. And then lastly, over to you, Emma.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Emma Fieldhouse. I guess the easiest way to summarise what I do is I'm a career environmentalist, and I specialise in sustainability education, particularly around climate change and carbon footprinting. I've basically done everything to do with sustainability since I got interested in it as a teenager. So I've got several degrees in environmental management. I then did a PhD focusing on how green UK environmental organisations and their employees are. And then I ended up becoming an environmental manager, and I literally accidentally became an entrepreneur, as I think many people around the table might kind of agree. I just had a change of career direction, and then discovered my founding partner, Anya, who had this great idea for a game that was literally a game changer. So and we're now producing, with the funding of the Women in Innovation Awards, we're now producing digital carbon footprint games based on an idea we've been already selling for a number of years of physical carbon footprint games. And yeah, I'm just hoping there'll be people out there interested in environment sustainability, and maybe I can give you some tips along the way for how to get into this kind of area. So, and I'm so excited to be here today.
Thank you all so much. So let's jump right in then. So Ellis, let's come to you first. You've got a very strong personal motivation behind the work that you do. Can you share a little bit more of that with the audience?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, it's a very personal story, but back in 2012, my identical twin brother suffered a traumatic brain injury, and this is whilst we were both studying at university. And there I kind of, obviously got real, like I lived in experience of what it was like for someone to go through the care pathway in the NHS, and really see the lack of support and the lack of technology that was used. And we were actually, my brother was very fortunate that he ended up getting he got a place at an NHS neuro rehabilitation unit, one of the best in the UK. But there's only kind of one place would be funded for the NHS per cohort. So an incredibly small amount of people actually receive this kind of support. And there I met a few of the clinicians who took charge of Luke's care. And that was, I guess, where the idea started for, could we actually kind of digitize components of this to make it more accessible? But it wasn't until maybe 8 or so years later that I really picked it up. I was still studying at the time. It was kind of parked in the back of my mind, this idea. And then, yeah, I guess the motivation, it was almost for me more of a question of, rather than a what if I did it, it was actually more of a question of what if I didn't do it. And for me, I knew that I couldn't really live with not trying to do something in this space. So yeah, that was kind of my driving motivation, and it just got to a point where I was like, I have to do this, and I felt like I was perfectly positioned to make a positive impact, or to try at least.
Thanks, Ellis. And then jumping over to you, Emma, sustainability is a huge topic at the moment. Why did you want to get involved? Why did what you inspired to focus on that area?
I mean, actually, for me, I think there's two sort of things from when I was growing up that were really important. My parents took me to the Centre for Alternative Technology near Machynlleth in Wales. That's quite a tricky one to say as well, actually, isn't it? And apparently I never shut up about the environment after that point. So that was like one of the reasons. And actually, Siwan might remember this, but I'm sure everybody else won't, about the Ethiopian starvation events that happened in the 1980s, which were incredibly moving, because there were just these terrifying images of these children who were starving to death in another part of the world. And I don't know what it was, but my brain made this connection that in some way, because I had such a kind of cushy life, they had a harder life. And so understanding of kind of global difference and diversity differences and inequalities sort of was just embedded in my head without me really actually knowing the words for it as a sort of teenager. And I just felt paralysed to do anything whilst I was still at school. It was so frustrating. And I don't know how it then kind of ended up being focused mostly on the environment, but I think I kind of wanted to just really put all my energies into trying to make a difference on the planet, basically. And yeah, so went the kind of hippie way, and I've done lots of environmental stuff since. So, but yeah, it's a great, rewarding career to have for sure. I've enjoyed all. So,
thanks, Emma. Jumping over to you now, Folu. Obviously, Emma said, you know, she explored different the ways that she could better help with society and the diversity of different people. And I know Vamos is doing something very similar in that area. So can you tell us a bit more about that and what inspired you to really set up Vamos?
Yeah, so almost felt like what Emma was saying reminds me of what I'm currently revising right now for my sociology exams, about thinking about global inequalities and the environment and stuff. But anyway, like, so yeah, part of my the large part of my inspiration for Vamos was based on my own experiences and the experiences of many of my peers, as like those from underrepresented backgrounds getting into Cambridge, because, you know, we all know how, like, just generally getting into university when you're from like low income, like lower socioeconomic, ethnic minority backgrounds, that's already a huge journey in itself. And then often it's kind of presented in the media that once you do get into a great uni or to do a great course, that like, that's it, social mobility is achieved, like it's all good, the world's like world peace and everything. But then like I realized that once I actually got here, like it's like, oh, it's just like the tip of the iceberg, because once you start at university, you're trying to juggle your academic priorities, your personal priorities at home, and just trying to even settle in and get used to like this new culture that you're a part of. And yeah, you realize that there's all this stuff about careers that we actually, like, I don't have any like personal connections in my family who could tell me about, oh, how to secure a spring internship, like spring internship week, like at a top firm or whatever, like all these different things get thrown at you. And so my own experiences, like, because I knew that I was interested in making a positive impact and things, and so I applied to the civil service fast stream like early diversity internship program, which is just a 1 week internship where you like shadow a current civil service fast streamer. But the process was like so long. Like it was, I'd just been at uni for like 2 months, and already I had to write I had to do like 2 situational judgment tests and write about my motivations and do a telephone interview. And so I was like, why is it that even though the whole point of this is to find out if this is the right career path for me, why do I already have to, like, I've kind of got everything together and I know that this is what's right for me. Like, how am I meant to be able to navigate the process to be able to get the experience that I need? You know, the whole conundrum of, oh, I want to get a job, but in order to get a job, you need to have experience. And so, like, my own experiences of like just my journey to being able to eventually, fortunately, like secure a graduate job in a role in human resources where I'm able to make a positive impact on people and do something that aligns with my interests, like, because of how, like, there are all these factors and all these things that you need to intentionally be aware of in order to be able to like succeed in what's become extremely competitive. Like, I realized that there isn't really, I can't think of any like online platforms that really help students with their like career journeys and be more understanding of like how, like, what their career options are and like how they can develop the skills and the skills that are sought after by employers in order to be able to get to where they want to go. So
can I jump in at that point? I'm actually the trustee of a charity, amazing charity called Change Agents UK, and so it's worth anybody who's interested in sustainability in particular to look them up, because they link people who want to go into sustainability with relevant sort of skills support and development, and also actually recruit people. It's like a recruitment agency as well for sustainability roles. So maybe for sustainability there is a little bit of a solution out there already.
Oh, that's really cool. I'm writing that down now.
I will make a link for you. I'll make a link.
And since you're the trustee, I might. Yeah. So already it seems that we're benefiting more from this panel than perhaps the people watching the panel. But yeah, like so yeah, like it's to be able to connect students and to make them aware of like what the different forms of career support are that exist, because it's become more complex now than ever before. Because before, like, you would have like university careers advisors in the past, and we still have that now, but students, like, I've like done research and found that students actually rely more and more on like online information and resources. And so now there are charities that exist and recruitment agencies, like Emma just mentioned, and like and just like even YouTube videos and platforms that have emerged. So I want to be able to help. I want Ramos to act as that central space that helps students to understand all the different forms of career support for different industries, so that they can like actually know how to get started on their career journey and be able to have some sort of strategic plan.
And I think that's so vital. I know when I started after university and went to look for a job, that I had that caveat of, oh, you've got a degree, but you also need experience too. And I didn't have the full amount of experience that they wanted in the field that they wanted, because I worked in other unrelated fields during my time at university. So it's great to actually have that link up with the experience that you'll need to get the career that you want out of university, as well as a university degree.
Can I chip in there with one other thing, which is sometimes you end up doing jobs that you absolutely hate. So I ended up in sales, which I hated, but the skills I picked up in sales have actually helped me through the whole of my career. So sometimes you might even end up doing something and you just think, why am I doing this? This is awful, but actually it gives you something really valuable at the end of it. So you'd be surprised what will happen in your career.
You do need to look at the transferable skills that you can use across. And I'm going to come to you, Diana, now. So I know everybody else is talking about what motivated and inspired them. Can you elaborate on that as well? Because you're in a very unique and modern area of wearable tech at the moment.
Yeah. So during my final year at the university, I kind of became very interested in robotics and innovation and AI field. I got so fascinated to learn more about the subject and how can I contribute towards that future and innovation. I really saw that it's going to completely transform the life and our daily life as we know it at the moment. So I really felt like I really want to be part of it. I don't know how, but I really need to get into that field. So I was driven and I was really curious, and I thought like, okay, maybe if I meet someone who is already working in that sector, I might get more understanding whether it's something I really want to do, or is it something that just comes and goes. And as a result, I decided to register on online app. It's called Sharp. So it's a special app that used specifically for to network with the professionals who have like similar interests. You can find even co-founders and mentors on that platform. And I was quite lucky. And one of the first people with whom I spoke, and the only person with whom I met, was my founder, Mayur. And we kind of clicked and started working together. The reason we actually started working together is because at the time he was doing his master's at the University of Bristol, and his field of research was in the area of prosthetics, and they were trying to improve the comfortness of the prosthetic socket. Basically, it's like the interface that connects the prosthetic device with the remaining limb. So we started working on it as a side project for a couple of months. But then we quickly realized that we need to, if we really want to make a change and bring this product's innovation to market, we need to register business and raise funding, because you might have very good intentions, but in this life, you do need to get funding to execute it. Yeah, so that was my journey.
Perfect. Well, that's a perfect segue, because Melanie asked before, how did you receive funding to start your businesses, and were there any grants available to you? So you're going to touch on this a bit later, but you might as well jump into this straight now to help answer Melanie. So I know, Emma, you've already answered a little bit in the chat box about women in innovation. It'd be great to hear about other funding opportunities that you've had. Who wants to jump in?
Oh, yeah, I'll jump in. So, I mean, I took a big risk and just started to work at the end of my PhD. So I was basically using that money to live on. and then I moved back home to save money. And it's a little, you know, it is difficult at first. It's a chicken and egg problem. To get the funding, you need to have provided evidence of a market, of a problem, and that your solution could fix it. But I'd say at first, target the kind of, if you want to go down this route, and I think everyone should, target these small startup competitions. Even if you're not successful, it focuses your output, it gets you like thinking about your value proposition. You'll have to generate, you know, information in part of your pitch deck that will really help the development of your company. And even if it's not a financial gain one, so sometimes it's mentorship, or, you know, even it's just a award, simply that validation will give you the confidence to go further, and you can then take that, maybe approach someone to become a co-founder. So there's lots of benefits to going down that route in terms of actually getting the cash to live. For us, that came maybe after about 4 or 5 months, and we got some grants from one was Innovate UK, another one was an accelerator. I'll just talk briefly on the accelerator. I would highly recommend trying to get on an accelerator program that has some funding, because when you really start out, as a first-time founder, you're just swimming around in all this information. You don't really know what's going on. If I look at myself a year ago, I was completely naive, you know, head in the sky. And you really mature, and an accelerator can just really, that's why it's called an accelerator. If you get on a good one, it's worth its weight in gold, and it will give you a network, it will give you the knowledge, and yeah, it really facilitate that learning process. So I can put in the chat maybe some accelerators which I've you know, got that are good in my opinion, if anyone's interested. But yeah, I'll leave it with that.
I said I'd do a pitch for Leicester accelerator startup as well, which is based at the Innovation Hub at the University of Leicester. I literally only went through that programme in February of this year. So even though I've been running a company for 7 years, it is now my 7th year running the company, because the switching and the pivoting to the climate change games is actually like a completely different business model. Because being a consultant actually is quite simple, but actually creating a company is a completely different thing. And so the accelerator programme has really made a huge difference. I mean, and the numbers of contacts I've made, and actually we've now just got the kind of tech solution. We've actually got a guy who's going to join the company on the 1st of August, and I only found that because of a link through the accelerator program. So I mean, you just never know which kind of direction the accelerator will take your company or business in, and it's, you know, basic level stuff you need to know about businesses. So if you can find something.
Thanks, Emma. Folu, Diana, anything to add?
I completely agree. Sorry, I completely agree to add as well that we are, you know, as a medical startup, both of us, it's important to focus to their opportunities which are kind of relevant to your sector. So what we've done at the beginning, we were applying to many different kind of competitions, and we were getting to the finals, but we never getting the final win. And you put in so much work, and sometimes you feel, oh, I wish I got that final win. It was really important for us. So I think it is important to kind of focus on a specific sector. So now we're completely focusing on the medical side, and so we're like kind of quite strict of where we're going and where we're definitely not going. So yeah, I would advise that to anyone who in the same sector as us.
Just adding something really quickly on that, Diana. I feel like it's almost like school, where like the older years get all the first queue, you know, first in line for lunch breaks or whatever. In the startup world, the older companies tend to get all the wins, and the newer companies, but you know, if you're patient enough, you will be an older company at some point. So, you know, dig in, and the wins will come.
You have to get this old, mate. This old.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I would add, especially for those well, since this is about like, we are being like, this event's all about students, so I'd really emphasize like the opportunities, there are lots of like entrepreneurship opportunities that are actually exclusive to undergraduate and postgraduate students. And so like that's actually like when Ellis was talking about like applying to lots of competitions, that's exactly what I did. I actually brought together a few of my friends and we formed a team to apply to, like, there was one called McKinsey Venture Academy, and we didn't get through the first round, but because the process was so rigorous, like we had to answer all these questions, you're basically having to make your own business plan in order to apply to something. And like another one that we applied for was one specifically within Cambridge, and we made it to the final round, so we actually had to pitch to investors. And so like, even though once again, like Diana was saying, like you get so far and then you don't get selected for the funding, and so that was a bit annoying. But then actually once I ended up applying to the Young Innovators Award, I had all this experience with applications in the past, and I could also demonstrate that, like, you know, because I think at that time, since it was lockdown, lots of people, especially lots of students, were coming up with business ideas and stuff. But I'd actually been working on Vamos before a lot of others. So I guess in that sense, I'd become one of the older students in the class as well. So I was able to demonstrate that we've actually been trying to take action on this idea, and we've been able to develop it further and get feedback and respond to that feedback. So like, it really helps a huge deal to be able to just apply to competitions for the sake of getting that experience, and also being able to demonstrate a track record of actually building and developing your idea over time, and also showing your commitment to it, because like that helps to set you apart from people who might have just like been like, oh, I'm a bit bored, I don't have anything else to do, let me try and get some funding out of some sort of competition or something, but not actually having that commitment to follow through in the long term.
And I think one of the points that you just raised, Folu, is really relevant and should be articulated again. So that feedback that you get from, you know, taking part in or applying for some of these competitions, even if you're not successful, can be worth its weight in gold. You take that feedback, you adapt, you make your, you know, your grant application, whatever you pitch, better as it goes on, which improves your chances for the next competition, the next thing that you want to do. So don't always be disheartened if you don't get on initially. You know, the feedback is really there to help you as well. So we've got a few questions in the chat. I'm going to come to some of them in a little bit, but I'm going to move on to another question. So I want to ask you, what has been the most challenging aspect of starting and developing your innovative business? Folu, can I come to you first?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as a student, like obviously it's like, and I'm sure like no matter what you're doing, for most people, especially if you were already working a full-time job when you were starting it, or just doing something full-time, like it's just about like trying to balance the different like priorities in different areas. And I think what also made that hard was like trying to like what was really challenging as well was like especially in the early stages, like I think with trying to build a strong team, because I did work with some of my friends, but they also had their own priorities, and so it got a bit hectic at times when like they wouldn't be responding to their texts, or like, you know, like they're busy with something, or they've got this going on. And so I think delegation and also like just time management and organization could be really hard in that sense of like, especially when you're like the team lead who's like trying to carry the idea forward. So you're both trying to carry the team as well as like trying to develop the idea itself. Because like, so yeah, you could divide a business into two things. There's the actual like idea of it and the strategy of it. And then there's the team that's actually meant to implement that strategy. So you could have an amazing strategy, but if you don't have the time or the team or the manpower to actually implement it, then it's just not going to work. And so I think that's definitely been really challenging, that whilst I have been able to develop the idea further through applying to these competitions and things, what's been really hard is like, as a final year student with some of my friends also like having to go off and focus on their own things, like now not having as much of the team or the like, yeah, just not being able to delegate or hand off and divide and conquer all the things that we need to do to actually execute the idea. So I'd say, like at first it used to be like, oh, just getting the funding, that's the huge mountain to overcome. And now I realized that, oh, now that I have this, I actually have to like, there's nothing standing in the way. The only thing that's in the way is myself and all these other things that I need to do and manage at the same time. So that's actually become even more challenging than getting the idea off the ground in the first place.
And over to you, Ellis. What was your biggest challenge?
I would, yeah, similarly, really. I think probably time and just unknown. Like, you don't know what you should be doing. There's a million things that you could do. And because you don't know, you've not done a startup before, you don't really know. About me anyway, I didn't know anything about business. It just feels like there's a million things. What should I be doing next? And you're always like wearing a hat just for 2 weeks. Like, this 2 weeks, I'm going to be a market research expert. Next 2 weeks, I'm going to be branding or whatever. But I can't help but like give a bit of advice here as well. I know that's going to be another part, but there is a process to it as well. Like, if you, and being disciplined about that process is really important. And you can read books and stuff. But often the books they'll give like a certain principle. Like the Lean Startup is a good book, but it's really is a high level principle, and it doesn't really give you any actionable things to really go and do. So I recommend, if you can, find someone who's done it before to help guide you. Or there is actually the best book that I've come across is one by this guy called Bill Orlett, which breaks things down into real actionable steps. And it just gives you, when you're unsure what you should do and stressing about the million things that you could do, that gives you just a framework to follow that will lead to some benefits. So yeah, being disciplined about your approach to try and help you figure out what it is you should be doing. And also, having a co-founder is super important to help you with that, or co-founders. Friends is an interesting one. Folu, I had something similar I was way more committed than my friend. I got my friends involved to kind of get this first idea off the ground, and then we realized that commitment levels were different. So we thanked each other, and I went for looking for a more professional relationship. My co-founder is now like a very close friend, but it started off as a professional relationship.
Can I jump in just at that point? Because I've just mentioned about the Founders' Dilemmas, which is a really good book, which I'm sure Ellis is aware of as well. And that whole thing about finding the right people to partner with, and whether you partner with friends, whether you go it alone, and like when to give equity in the company, how to split it, who takes different roles. It can get very complicated, but there are certain key books that really will help you kind of narrow that down. And so I've put a couple in the chat. Mom Test, Founders' Dilemmas, and the Lean Startup are like 3 really good books. They give you a great place to start. So
thanks, Emma. I'm going to come to you, Diana. So what was the biggest challenge for you when you were starting your business?
I would agree that it's partially, obviously, it's financial funding. Obviously, it's very important for you to speed up the growth of the business, and also would agree that it's super important to be focused and execute and plan your upcoming quarter or upcoming year. What's the most important things for you to achieve? I would say for us, it was also quite challenging as R&D. We were still in the research and development stage, so it was very important to have that reality check of, okay, so we wanted to create this amazing technology, but how do you gonna actually commercialize it? It's a medical sector, it's extremely costly, and there's tons of regulations to consider, and that was a very important aspect for us to understand. And so we spoke to many people who already had their businesses and more advanced levels. One of them opened bionics, who were very kind to allocate 1 hour and spoke to us and gave us some valuable advice about the regulations. And I just think it's important to have that reality check, speak to people who are already ahead of you, so to make sure that you're not trying to execute something which is pretty much impossible based on where you are at the moment. Yeah, I would say that's kind of was tricky for us at the beginning, because we had such a huge ambitions, and we had to kind of degrade our ambitions slightly. So they were reasonably possible to accomplish.
Perfect. Thank you, Diana. Over to you, Emma. So any challenges that you faced?
Probably quite different to everybody else here, considering my age. But actually, I had kind of burnt out through work purposes or through work experiences a couple of times. And so I'm very aware that actually having that balance between your work and your life is really important. Although I've got a friend who says that actually the thing with work is if it's something that you really enjoy and you're really passionately committed to, it doesn't really feel like work anyway. But it is then possible to still burn yourself out by doing too much. So I think you've got to really understand what your own boundaries are and what are the kinds of things that you need to give you nourishment so that you've got plenty of energy to kind of carry on. And so, like, again, really somebody starting up a new company at my age, I probably, if I had like the choice, I'd go back again and start it a little bit earlier, maybe in my 30s at the latest. Oh gosh, so she doesn't look that old, does she? But anyway, and so, but you know, and for me, it's also because we have the motivation to save the planet. You know, it's like, well, if I'm not working on it all the time, I feel like I'm like letting the planet down. So, you know, that can be a tricky thing. But, you know, I am part of the planet too. And so it's important for me to make sure that I look after myself and put some of my needs first. And bearing in mind, I also have, through very sort of traumatic circumstances, inherited a family child this year because my sister died. So I'm now actually looking after my niece full time and my sister's dog. So I've become a dog mom and a mom overnight, starting a business, same time. You know, I'm like, come on, life, bring it on. I can do it.
Lots of challenges for Emma this year, but you have made a very valid point. You know, it is about the kind of holistic life that you want to live rather than just focused on career, business 24/7. You need to actually carve out time for yourself and your personal well-being as well. So jumping on to the next question, and this is one from our audience. At what point did you feel confident enough to take the leap and do work full-time? I know some of you are still in education and other kinds of things. So anyone want to jump in on this? Emma?
Back on again. I'm epic microphone fail there. Sorry. So at what point should you get? Oh, well, I don't know. You've just got to get on with it at whatever time it arises. And I think for me, I found that just sort of, sorry, I've made notes as well, so I'm kind of having a little sneaky look every second when you kind of remind us. And I was like, have we gone out of sync with the questions? Because I'm probably looking at the wrong thing. But no, it was like the questions from online, wasn't it? Sorry, whose question was it online?
It was.
So I can read it again. At what point do you feel confident enough? Okay. I accidentally ended up in this, right? I never expected to own a consultancy in the first place. It was just a complete change in what happened for me career-wise. That actually wasn't even my choice, really. And so I became a consultant just kind of by accident, and never thought that it would be, you know, like I said, it's just never something that ever crossed my mind. I'm from an entire family of teachers. So, like, I was either going to be a teacher or a teacher. so doing this, it's just, I don't know. And I think I did when we found the idea for the game. So when I met Anya and she had the idea for the game, though, it was like that light bulb moment where you go, that's what I have to do. And you sort of go, if I don't take this to the world, there is a real problem here. And so I guess maybe that gives you the confidence to actually get on with it, because you just realise that's kind of like your purpose. And so you just have to take it out to the world, as hard as that might be, and find the right way to actually make it happen. So, and I guess I'm kind of also looking away, because being older, I don't care particularly if I fail at things, because I know it doesn't matter. I'm going to switch off now because of dogs.
So I was very much said, you know, sometimes it's a leap of faith, and you know, actually don't be too afraid of failure as well. That was your kind of final message there, Emma. Anybody else want to jump in on this one? I know a couple of you are still at university and still doing other things on the side. What kind of what point did you decide to really focus on your business?
For me, it was like sometimes you know, like you just know that what you're doing should be done, and I guess that could be enough if you're very confident in yourself. But I'd actually recommend doing it more if you can inspire others to follow you, whether that's like winning a little competition or getting co-found or whatever. Because even if if you can't convince anyone else of your mission, of your vision, then ultimately it's not going to go anywhere. So it's like, yeah, can you convince other people, and not just your mum, like someone did the mum test, but some stranger, hopefully an expert in that field. And then if you start convincing them, then you're onto something, and it's probably worth committing more of your time to it.
Perfect. I'm going to combine two questions now. So I want to know, this is an audience question, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever been given? And what advice would you give to somebody that's starting a business? So Folu, could I jump to you for this one?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of the worst advice, I guess I'd say there's this one particular just type of advice that I've gotten twice. It didn't really feel like advice because it wasn't very constructive. It was like, I don't see how this is going to work. I think that's you can't really get much worse than that when they say, well, it's just not going to work, and they just say that, whereas they're not and it doesn't seem like they see at least if you think something might not work, explain why, and it's is it because of the format of the idea? Is it because you don't think it's profitable? Is it because you don't think there's a demand for it? Is it there are lots of you can't just make a statement and then not actually back it up, because then how can I use that feedback? Because if we were talking about earlier about how valuable it is to get feedback, but I can't do anything with feedback that's saying this is bad or this isn't I just don't see it working. So I think but the most useful other forms of feedback have been or we think it's success, or be really hard to succeed because the area of careers and recruitment is already a really saturated market. That makes more sense. At least provide a reason for that, or we need you to see how you can really differentiate yourself and become profitable in relation to the market. That's good feedback. And so I guess with the second question about advice for young people wanting to be an entrepreneur, I think reach out to as much support as you can get, because you can't be an entrepreneur in a vacuum. The whole point of an entrepreneur is that you are identifying a problem and trying to solve it, or trying to make people's lives better, or trying to address something, or make something more efficient, or make it better in some way. And so you can't do that without actually interacting with others, as tempting as it may be, because there's only so much you can do with an idea, just sitting and writing and thinking about the ways you could take it, until you actually take action on it and get people's thoughts on it. And so that's what I did with at the very early stages of Amos. Was I just, especially since I was serving students' needs first, I just asked my friends about it. I just tell them this is the idea that I have, what are your thoughts, and get their feedback. And it definitely was a bit daunting, because it feels almost like your intellect is being judged, because what if they're you're a bit, that's a bit of a weird idea, why do you think of that? But it's also it won't succeed if you don't have that validation that people actually want this or need this, and are actually willing to go through the inconvenience of trying out a new idea or a new product or a new way of doing something. So that's what's really important for someone who wants to become an entrepreneur, I guess. It's that willingness to listen and not take things personally.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Folu. Diana, I'm going to come to you next. So worst piece of advice, and then the best piece of advice you could give.
Is it the worst advice that I could give, or I received?
The worst advice that you've ever received.
I don't know what to say. Okay. Oh, it's very hard to say what was the worst advice, because I think I've received some advices that turned out not to be right for me, but I think none of the advices are bad. It's just that people are not aware of the overall circumstances of yours, so they judge you on a snapshot. So they see me in that particular moment. So what happened to me, basically, I was breaking down mentally. Oh, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. It's too much. And then they only saw that part of me at that moment, and they thought, that's not for you, Diana. It's you don't enjoy it that much when you talk about it. It's so stressful for you. And so if you present that question to that person who sees you only on that particular moment, you might receive an advice that you should probably reevaluate whether you're doing something you actually would like to do in life. Worst advice is to consider that each advice actually applies to you, and you have to, really listen to it. So just listen to any advices and then filter it to yourself, and ask other people around, and then just make your own judgments. And the advice that I can give, I don't know if it's best or if it's going to be valuable for anyone, but what was important for me personally to overcome was not to get too embedded in your initial idea and your initial business plan. Like sometimes you get so personally attached to it, and you think this is the thing I want to do, and you might have other evidence coming in, and you might not see them for some period of time, and that will it's going to put you back, because you're actually not taking on board some important information that you should be considering right now and changing your direction. So yeah, I think that's something to have in mind, that maybe your initial idea is not perfect and maybe you have to pivot.
That's so relevant, Diana. The amount of entrepreneurs that I've come across where they have, changed things along the way, and it's the majority of entrepreneurs change things along the way. The initial idea adapts, pivots, changes, and you have to be open to that. You can't just be set in stone, because it may not work. I'm going to jump over to you now, Ellis. So worst piece of advice that you've been given, and then the best piece of advice you can give others.
Yeah, that's tough. I think I'm probably better at giving bad advice than receiving it. Honestly, I was just trying to write down, like, thinking of the worst advice I've ever got for my business, and I would say, like, similar to Diana, I tend to just collect them all and then make my own judgment call. I think, like, the name of the game in the start of it, like, you want to get such an expert in this field that ultimately you've got to be you're the best person in the whole world to make that decision, because it's, it better than anyone else. Obviously it's not going to happen when you first start, but just listen to, even if it's crap advice, listen to it all, and then, try and use it accordingly. Definitely a +1 on the not being too fixed on your original idea. Like, it's like, validate your assumptions is kind of the terms that you'll hear. It can seem a little bit, intellectualized or whatever, but it's really just listen to your primary users, your customers, or your potential customers. So on that, I'll give like 2 bits of advice. First of all, it's really hard. So make sure whatever you're doing is something that fills you with energy and passion, because you're going to need that when you wake up in the morning and you've just been working late the night before. We will push you through those difficult times, because there's no escaping. It's going to be really, really hard. And then on a more practical side, before you start building anything, before you really get too far down, this is what I want to do, just go and speak to people, speak to whoever the people you think you want to serve, understand their problems, walk a day in their, a day in their shoes, and, at least like 10 people, and start getting, before you start refining anything, and then use that information, not just to like validate what you thought was true, but just, use it going forward. So yeah, that's definitely what I would have done differently if I started again.
Thanks, Ellis. Over to you, Emma.
I think she was probably biased, but probably some of the worst advice I had was to not apply for the Women in Innovation Award, because that came from my mom. But to be fair, I literally put the application in 4 days before my sister passed away, and I was her main carer. And I can honestly tell you that was a really difficult thing to do, to actually get that paperwork sorted and in, when I was having the background of all of that going on behind it. And do you know what it was? It was partially that I knew my life was going to be so different after that event, that I actually needed to do something for me that was important for me and important for my future and important for the future of my niece. And so that actually kind of really like made me do it. So that was quite bad advice. The other bit of advice in relation to that, I've already put it in the chat, but somebody who said you won't win it the first time you reply. So that was just wrong. So, okay, out wrong. But in terms of good advice, then, I mean, I've said it a few times in the chat, and I hate to quote Nike, but just do it, you know, just get on with it. If it's the right feeling for you, just get on with it, because you're probably the right person to make it happen if you really feel that you are. And we've already said before about trying to get all of that specialist advice through accelerator programs. There's lots of free stuff out there, and you'd be absolutely amazed at the number of people who are very happy to talk to you as a young startup. You know, you might think nobody wants to talk to you, but they will. You know, you've just got to ask them, and even if it's like 30 minutes or something, they'll have a quick chat. You'll learn something new and interesting and useful. And I think I agree with what everybody else said as well, that it's then about filtering the advice, isn't it? It's about knowing which bits of advice to take at the right time that suits you and your company at that particular sort of snapshot in time. And don't be sold by the Dragon's Den model, because you know that's just not what it's like, really. I don't think.
Definitely
Might not
not.
need the investment.
I do like the fact that you've said filter the advice, make sure it's right for you. One of the best pieces of advice that I got off somebody was them telling me, and it was a teacher at school telling me I shouldn't do that, and he was absolutely right, because he spent so much time actually figuring out what my motivations are, my passions are, to turn around and say a career in this area wouldn't be right for you, because I've worked in that area. I know it's not going to match up to what you're thinking in your head, and that's because he spent so much time with me. So do filter the any advice that you get, as our panel have said, because it might be that they're giving you a negative, but it actually might be the right advice for you. But it might be that they're giving a positive, and that again might not be the right advice for you. So just make sure that you apply it to yourself during that kind of process.
I've got two of the real gems that I use all the time. So first is argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they'll be yours. So if you tell yourself you can't do something, then you won't do it. And the other thing is, never make perfection the enemy of success. It's really important to be pragmatic. By trying to create this perfect thing, you won't create anything. And so I think those are all the way through your career generally are just really helpful things.
And most businesses refine as they go. So we do see a lot of people saying, it's not quite ready. I don't think it's the right idea. Or I haven't perfected this yet. But actually, the journey will help them start to work out some of the kinks, rather than them getting everything exactly right and then taking the next step. So if you are, looking for a career as an entrepreneur, then do start. Don't let it hold back if you haven't got that perfected idea yet. So we've got another question from the chat. Have you ever said no to particular support because you didn't feel it was right for you and your business direction? So support systems in place. Ellis, can I come to you first?
Yeah, we had offer for investment that we had to think really, really hard whether it was right for the company. And I would say you've got to think of the company as that. It's a company, it's an entity which is separate to yourself. So when it comes to taking on support or taking on finance, whatever it is, you sit down with whoever's involved, your co-founders, and just what is in the best interest of the company. Forget everything else. It sounds really simple, but just to view your decision making for best interest of the company. And then, if you're really personally committed, if it's difficult conversations, if it's whatever it is, it's for the best interest of the company. Therefore, I'll go and have that difficult conversation. It kind of gives you that drive to do it, and also gives you a lot of clarity as a team. So yeah, saying no was funding, and at first you'd say yes to anything. And I would actually recommend, if someone at early stage, if someone's willing to give you money, take it, definitely. Unless it's going to really screw up your equity and your cap table and stuff. Just take it because you need that little bit to get you off the ground. But then you can take a little bit more pragmatic view and make decisions for the best interest of the company rather than as individuals.
Thanks, Ellis. Folu, over to you.
Yeah, I think like especially soon after like the announcement of like, oh, Vamos got selected for the Young Innovators Award, like there are a few people who like reached out on LinkedIn who were interested in like investing, and like even though like, because the decision wasn't that like they're like, okay, I've got some money ready for you, do you want to take it? It was like they were just expressing an interest in like possibly being an investor, and like that the option is there. And like I decided not to follow up on that then, but like I know that the version of me like a year ago, like if they had like reached out to me on LinkedIn, because at that time that's when we were applying for these competitions where we could get prize money as well as further investment. So I would have been like, oh my gosh, this is it, this is a big break, and I would have followed up on it. But I'm actually like, I think for me, I have not like really been actively seeking out like formal investment yet, or like, you know, private forms of funding yet, because it feels like the Vamos idea for us is like moving more towards like at least starting out in like the not-for-profit area, because of the fact that we do want to benefit students first, and we actually see the business problem as that the current forms of like online websites, they're so concerned with trying to secure as much like advertising from employers that they don't really try to like put their energy and time into creating resources that really benefit students. And the online resources that do benefit students tend to be done by charities or like not-for-profit. So I think like in terms of like opportunities like tied to like funding and investment in like the more private sector, like we've just been realizing that actually it makes more sense to pursue things in the public and not-for-profit sector at first, because like the interests of those stakeholders would align better with what we want to do. And then other things have been like some opportunities where it's with like a big name bank or something, but it's more to do with like helping you get business knowledge. And I've now realized that like some of the things have been, oh yeah, I forgot about this other opportunity that I got onto where I could have like developed an app using no-code software with like the training of like the actual software like owners, but like the commitment of that as well as the time zone difference would have meant like having to come to classes at like 4 a.m. in the morning, which like I felt like that was, I'm not that desperate for, I'm sure I could find a way to make it happen. Like, so there are some things like it's not just due to like business strategy, it could also be just due to like personal like needs to sleep and other things. So like these are all important things to weigh in. And so it is like easy to like, if you're like, oh like we have to get this business off the ground, I'll take the first thing that comes. Like if you do that, if you do commit to something that's actually not the best fit for you, then that can actually prevent you from finding opportunities that are a better fit for you in the future, because you're already committed to that, and you're no longer using the time that you now use to work with on this program, and to instead pursue more opportunities or wait for the right one to come around.
I totally agree. You know, you do need to make sure that when opportunities do present themselves, that you are aware of the commitments that them opportunities come with, and if that actually aligns with your personal time and other responsibilities that you might have. Diana, I'm going to come to you. So is there anything that you've said no to?
Yes, we had one opportunity from one of the universities, which was like a program that allows to receive a free design work for your product. It's free for that moment, and I think it's like you get the loan that you have to repay once you generate revenue, and the repayment would be about £30,000. So at the time we thought, oh, it's a free service for us, let's do it. And we didn't really consider much what's going to be the consequences of speaking to investors later and explaining, okay, so what was your reasoning behind agreeing to this project and how it benefited your business. So as we got into the details of the contract and start thinking about it in more depth, we realized that we are not at the right stage to go forward with it, because we were still finalizing our hardware components. And so if there were any changes in the hardware components, then we had to redesign everything completely. So it's a great opportunity for somebody who is already kind of nearly product ready. That was, I think, a year ago. But it wasn't the right time for us to take that opportunity. So we, fortunately, we realized that, and we had to cancel the author. And yeah, I think saved our explanations for the future investors.
Thanks, Diana. Emma, we are coming to the end, so can I actually be fairly succinct?
Yeah. I think considering the nature of my company, you know, it's all about the climate and sustainability. We have had to think really carefully about the businesses that we're now going to be working with. There was a very large fossil fuel company that we did some work with in the past before, and we could probably have got them to fund this 3 years ago, but we decided it just wasn't going to work, because you can't have a climate change game that has been, you know, invested in by a fossil fuel company. Just so ethically, you might often find that there'll be these kind of ethical choices that you have at certain kind of points within the business journey. So sometimes you do have to scratch your head and think about, well, what's the right way to go on those? But in that case, it was obvious. We knew we couldn't take that kind of money.
Thanks, Emma. So we are at the end of our session now. Is there any final comments from any of our panelists before we wrap up?
I just think this has been great. I think I've learnt loads. I don't know about everybody else. It's been fun.
Yeah, I did. I just want quickly to just add one point, that I don't know about the rest of the panelists, but I personally often feel afraid of doing many of their tasks that I have to do as a business founder, and it's fine. Specifically, if you execute it first, it's fine to feel nervous and feel like, oh, maybe I'm not great at that, but just keep doing it. It's gonna come to you. You will eventually get better. So don't get demoralized by feeling you're not expert in the field yet.
Thanks, Diana, for that final comment, which is, you know, hugely relevant. I'm going to say thank you to our young innovators, Folu, Ellis, and Diana, and to our Women in Innovation Award winner, Emma. Before you all leave us, I also want to let you know that the next Young Innovators competition will open on the 14th of June with a full briefing event where you can ask all questions about the competition on the 15th of June. The registration link is over on the Innovate UK stand now. The awards are aimed at those aged between 18 and 30-year-old who, with help from Innovate UK and their partners KTN and Innovate UK Edge, can turn their great ideas into successful businesses. Winners receive £5,000 grant, a living allowance, and a tailored package of support over a 12-month period. The competition closes on the 28th of July. If you're interested in finding out more about opportunities in innovation, or you would like to find out more about the Young Innovators and Women in Innovation Awards, or ask any questions, please visit the Innovate UK stand today. Otherwise, then we will all hope to speak to you again, fingers crossed, at the Innovate UK briefing event for young innovators as well. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks to Siwan as well for keeping us all going, asking the right questions.
Thank you, Siwan.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
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 I thought we would still be talking to one another.